Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. And thank you all for joining us for another wonderful Foresight Lecture. The Foresight Lectures are very, very special for the Alpha Group. They are where we bring experts, and I do mean experts in their field, to talk about elements and aspects of business to help all of our audience and to help our Alpha Group members and coaches and regional directors all over the world. Now, I will introduce our speaker in a moment. Before that, let me take 2 minutes to briefly explain who the Alpha Group is, if you have not come across us before. The Alpha Group is a peer-to-peer executive board. We've been going for 9 years, and we are currently the fastest growing peer-to-peer executive board in the world. We are currently in 31 countries, and we have Alpha Groups from Singapore in one part of the world over to Guatemala and San Francisco in the other, from Oslo all the way down to Johannesburg. So we cover pretty much every continent. The Alpha Group is very special. We work only with the owners of SMEs, that is small to medium enterprises, and usually with a minimum revenue of about $500,000 per annum or above. Alpha Groups meet once every calendar month, usually around a board table, but also we have many online boards that are meeting globally. We never allow more than 20 members ever in any one Alpha Group, and no 2 people in the same industry. And the reason we've grown so well, so rapidly, so fast, is because of the one and only promise that we make to our members. And that is that we will double the value of their business in 2 to 3 years. And so far, ladies and gentlemen, we're delighted that we have never failed in that mission. So let me now come to today's wonderful speaker. And I'm showing you my screen, and I will stop that in a moment when I hand over to Derek. But today we are joined by a very, very unique and remarkable man, Derek. Now, Derek, from his home in East Africa, actually travels the world. We've just been talking now about how we're all missing the travel we have been used to doing up until recently. He is not only one of the business's most sought after speaker, he is a consultant, he is a trainer, he is an executive coach. He has delivered multiple TEDx talks all around the world and is highly sought after. And today he's going to talk about a subject that is very interesting, because not only is it a subject that is absolutely crucial in business, but is very, very rarely spoken about. So without further ado, let me stop my recording and hand over, I'll stop the share and hand over to this rather wonderful man, Derek. And again, I remind all of you, you might have the opportunity of speaker view, gallery view on the top of your screen. It will be better if you chose speaker view. Derek, my friend, over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Donald. I'm truly humbled, honored, and delighted to be here today with you all from Nairobi, Kenya, where it is a bright and sunny day. We have a lot to cover and not much time. I think that's all how our lives are. So I'm going to get right into it, but maybe I'll just start off by telling you a little bit about why I got into this business. So when I was young, I loved comic books. I loved the comic genre, comic books, movies to do with comic characters. Actually, I still do as an adult. But I remember, particularly when it came to superheroes, that I wanted to have a superpower myself. And the superpower that I wanted to have was to be invisible. Now, I wanted to be invisible for a number of reasons. I wanted to be invisible so that when my parents told me to leave the room because they were about to get into a conversation, I wanted to be able to sneak back in to hear what they were saying. I wanted to sneak into my sister's room when she slammed the door and had hours upon hours of conversation with her boyfriend. And regrettably, I also wanted to be invisible in school. I wanted to sit at the back of the classroom, not be called upon by the teacher, and just go through my day without being seen, heard, or remembered. Now, fast forward 30-something odd years, and here I am in the most visible of careers. Because ladies and gentlemen, this is what I do for a living, is I stand in front of numerous audiences and talk to them about some of the topics that I am going to address today, about being seen, about being heard, and about being remembered for the right reasons. I like to say that I help my target market, my clients, the professionals, wonderful professionals all over the world that I've worked with, go from being invisible to being visible. I turn them into superheroes. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a topic, and as Gerald rightly said, it's not something that we necessarily think of. I think everybody on this call knows something about business etiquette or how to run virtual meetings, because this has been certainly our way of life for the better part of this year. But sometimes it's good to have a reminder, not necessarily direction. And so I hope that this talk will do exactly that. Okay, so I want to start off first of all by saying that when it comes to business etiquette and how you present yourself virtually, really what we're looking to do is to connect with our target market. We want to show the importance of being a professional. We want to have examples of what it means to have a positive executive image and commit to these good values and wonderful business practices. Our agenda today is simple, folks. We're going to talk a little bit about the virtual meeting etiquette, a few tips. I'm going to share some essential business etiquette tips, and then hopefully there'll be time to answer any of your questions. And having said that, if there is one thing that you would like to take away today, please go ahead and in the chat box, you can put in there one thing that you would like me to talk about and address clearly, because we have a limited time to talk about this important subject. So I want you to imagine two ladies in this world of ours today. So I'm gonna call the first lady Janine. So this is something that happened to Janine yesterday. So Janine has been struggling, admittedly, over the last few months with how things have changed. But she is working from home. She happens to be an accountant. And Janine went to bed the previous night very late because she usually stays up watching movies. And consequently, she got up late in the morning and she had an 8 o'clock meeting. Now, no, Janine is working from home. So she got up at about 7:30. She didn't have time to take a shower. She simply walked to the bathroom, washed her face, came back, opened her laptop on her bed, and joined the meeting 10 minutes late. She didn't turn on her camera. She was quiet for the better part of the meeting, and that set the tone for her day. Now, there's another lady by the name of Maureen. Now, Maureen is lucky because she's been able to go back to work. Her office has opened. And Maureen had a similar type of day. She had an 8 o'clock meeting, and she got up at 5 o'clock. She got up, she did some meditation. She took a shower, she put on the appropriate clothing. She was able to catch public transportation, get into town early enough. She was in the office at 7:30. She was all set and ready for the meeting at 8 o'clock, and she was an active and willing participant during that meeting. Now, of those two ladies, Janine and Maureen, which one would you want to have working for you? I think the answer is obvious. And clearly the difference between the two was this thing called perhaps etiquette, right? What's the first thing that pops into your mind when you hear the word etiquette? So very often when I ask this question, I hear responses like manners or politeness, or even the golden rule. How many of you have heard of the golden rule? Actually, if you have heard of the golden rule, kindly, if you can put in the chat a Y or a yes, just to let me know that you've heard of the golden rule. I'm just going to pause there for a moment. I don't have the chat open in front of me, so perhaps Colin or Gerald will let me know if the Y is coming in.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of people have put no, but we've got
Yes.
lots and lots of yes.
Okay, great. Well, the golden rule is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. In other words, treat people as you would like to be treated. Now, here's the thing about that piece of advice, which is sound advice. Maybe the other person wouldn't want to be treated the way you would want to be treated. Consider Maureen and Janine, right? So Janine is accustomed to using coarse language when she talks. And she's actually having a conversation with Janine, and she uses that type of language, which really puts off Maureen. Janine might feel emboldened to use that language because that's the way she speaks, and she wouldn't mind being spoken like that. But there is an amendment to the golden rule, and that's a step up. And I learned this actually not too long ago, a few years ago, the platinum rule. The platinum rule is treat other people the way the way they would want to be treated. Treat others the way that they would want to treat it. And the idea is that in an increasingly diverse and complicated world, it's not simply enough to apply your standards. You have to make an effort to think about where people are coming from. This call has people from all over the world. Take into account their perspectives, their culture, their backgrounds, and treat them accordingly. Moving on, there is a report that came out a couple of years ago from the management consulting group Accenture, where they said that understanding and managing emotion is the single most important determinant of business success. That was 2 years ago. Think about today. Many of us have transferred to this virtual world where we are trying to grab your attention and hold it through these unusual means. So let me talk a little bit about that. How can we manage to hold people's attention? Indeed, this is how you can show your executive presence. I'm going to start with some basics. Lighting, audio. How many of you turn on your cameras when you are engaging your target market, particularly if you're doing it through this virtual medium? Now, I know there are days we wake up and we certainly don't want to be seen, or there may be meetings where perhaps you're a passive participant. But as much as possible, I would strongly recommend that where you can, please do turn on your camera. And there have been studies about having your camera on and the fatigue that accompanies having your camera on for most of the day. But if you are going to have your camera on and you want to connect with your target market, then one of the important things is to be aware of the lighting. How are you seen? Now, I've set up my area here. So there's a light in front, there's lights on the side, there's lights to this side. Hopefully you can see me, as Gerald put it at the beginning, in my full glory and splendor. You can see my mouth move. That aids my communication because I'm not physically in front of you. But I've been in meetings where people have turned on the camera and you can't see them. You're just seeing shadows. They've standing or sitting in front of a window behind them. So as simple as it sounds, play around with the setting in your area, particularly if you're doing this virtually, and make sure that the lighting is suitable. Also, it should be mentioned that audio is important. Now, audio, again, most of us, when we're communicating, certainly through our laptops, we may not necessarily be using headphones or earbuds, but sometimes having those, particularly if they have mics, can enhance the sound. Now, I'm lucky. I do this for a living, so I've invested in a little mic over here. So this hopefully makes my voice sound a little bit richer, because sometimes just speaking through the laptop, your voice sounds a little bit tiny, or there may be an echo depending on the setup that you have over your room. So lighting and audio are two very important things to take care of. In fact, in lieu of us not being able to see you and we can only hear you, audio becomes even more important. And speaking of audio, The late John F. Kennedy said this, that the only reason to speak is to change the world, which means all of us have a God-given, and I call it a God-given gift, to be able to speak. But sometimes we do not use our voices the way God intended. And if you are going to speak, then you should use your voice to its full and maximum capacity. Now, I'm not going to get into some of the little intricacies, but I will mention three things, the three E's. When you are trying to connect with that person over there, and certainly to show part of your personal brand, the three E's. Bring a little bit of energy. There's a transfer of that energy, hopefully, that you can feel from me, even though I'm thousands of miles from where you are. And that energy is you can feel it through the screen. Second E is bring some enthusiasm. If you're not excited about whatever it is that you are talking about, your idea, your project, your service, then don't expect other people to be enthusiastic as well. And the third E is enjoyment. We could do with a little bit more of that, certainly in the world or the environment that we're in. So energy, enthusiasm, and enjoyment. Bring those three, and your voice should be able to show that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more, and then I'm going to sort of pause and get some feedback from you. I'm going to talk about positioning of your laptop, particularly the camera. So I have a setup here where I have my laptop here on my desk, and I have an additional screen up on my desk and a webcam, so that the webcam is actually positioned so that it looks directly into my eyes. It's almost parallel. And again, I've been in meetings where people have that laptop and they're peering down. They're way too close. And certainly there may be, I don't know, if I have this laptop and I'm looking down on top of it, it may be showing this part of my neck, which is, I wouldn't say is my most attractive feature. So again, this just helps with being able to connect with those people across there. Make sure that the camera is almost eye line with your eyes. So positioning of your laptops, and you know, you can play around. I've seen people put them on books, put them on boxes, and that sort of thing. Okay. Body language. Okay, so as you can all see, I am standing up. And to me, standing up is the way that I can portray certainly my energy, enthusiasm, and enjoyment for this particular talk. Besides which, I think standing up allows or confers a certain amount of credibility on me. It certainly makes me, where I am, seem a little bit more authoritative. I find that when I'm sitting, now again, I'm not saying that there aren't meetings where I sit, but if I'm giving a keynote talk or presentation like today, I find standing up much more, much better, I think, in terms of how I connect with people who are on that screen over there. Standing up also does a couple of things. Remember the voice, it lengthens my diaphragm, so my voice is more powerful. I have a little bit of room around here to move around. So again, I have that sort of palpable energy that I can transfer to you. And I'm able to gesture a little bit more. I gesture a lot when I talk. You're able to see my hands. And this nonverbal communication, I think, is a powerful way to be able to connect with people in this virtual world. So look at your setup, look at the type of meeting that you're going to have, and then make an informed choice in terms of how you are going to share your ideas and have people connect with you in this virtual world. Okay, I'm going to take a pause there just to make sure that we are together, because I know the temptation is to multitask and to be checking your emails while you're listening to Derek speak. And maybe if anything that I've said in these first 10 minutes has resonated with you, again, just put in a Y or a yes in the chat box. And Colin and Gerald, you can help me and let me know if there are Ys that are coming in.
There are a number of Ys coming in.
Wonderful. Excellent. All right. And again, don't forget, if there is anything that you would like me to address specifically, I think you can put it in the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to get around to it before this talk is over.
Yeah, I think you've got about 40 Ys or yeses coming in. So I think it's resonating with a lot of people.
That warms the cockles of my heart. All right, as one of my teachers used to say. Okay, your background, right? So I have my camera on. Hopefully you can see my background over here now. Again, I've had this conversation with people who say, well, the background should be as minimalist as possible. Yes, there is some sense in that. But I look at my background as part of my personality, my brand, my company's values. So it says a little bit about me. Now, I'd like to think it is professional. There's, a few things going on here, the whiteboard, the books, but this is all part of my portraying this particular public image to you, my audience. Again, this is all things that I have seen as recently as last week, and with senior executives, where the background clearly did not reflect well on this particular person. And I'll leave it as that. There is a fantastic, if you are so inclined on social media, a fantastic Twitter account called Room Rater. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, which actually looks at people's backgrounds, and particularly people in the public eye, and rates them and gives some sort of comments. It's a wonderful way to spend a little bit of time and sort of compare yours to theirs, or even get some ideas about what you can do. All right. Let's talk about your professional look. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I have on my waistcoat, which is part of my three-piece suit. I didn't don on my three-piece suit because I thought that would be a little bit too much. But I'm wearing this with a dark blue shirt, and I have a little pocket hanky you can see over here, again, for some visual balance or attention, if you will. This is not an afterthought. Now, having darker clothes, particularly with a lighter background, I think makes it stand out. But the fact is that I have, fill in the cliche, dressed to impress, dressed for success, dressed as I want to be addressed. There are many people who don't prioritize this. Now, again, I'm not saying you should dress up in your skirt suit, ladies, or your three-piece suit, gentlemen, but there is something about how you appear on screen that says something about you. And if you're going for the lowest common denominator, ratty t-shirt, and that's it, nobody else is going to see anything, and God knows what's going on in the bottom half, then you're not doing yourself any favors. Speaking of the bottom half that I have over here, I have on a pair of trousers with a belt. In other words, my entire outfit, and socks, by the way, is designed to put me in the mood, if you will, into the frame of mind that this is a serious conversation, and everything that I wear sort of reflects on part of my presentation. So spending just a little bit of effort, could be throwing on a jacket, a blazer, even on top of a t-shirt, wearing a shirt with a collar, all of these things. Do something, and I'm talking to the gentleman here, to sort of raise your virtual profile. And ladies, you're obviously not exempt from this. Okay, did you know, for example, that wearing makeup on screen does three things? Well, when you are speaking, as I intimated earlier, people are watching your mouth, particularly if the camera is turned on. Do you know, with a little bit of color around your lips, people can see your mouth move, which actually aids in your communication across this medium. How about a little bit of color or mascara around your eyes? Well, it makes your eyes actually pop out, which aids in eye contact. And clearly, when you're wearing some sort of makeup, skin looks a little bit more flawless. Now, again, this is not a conversation about you must wear makeup, but even doing something to your face, which is primarily what people are going to see, aids in being able to connect and transfer your thoughts and ideas and connect with this audience. Okay? Yeah. I'm wearing my favorite cologne. Again, it just puts me in the frame of mind, even though I'm alone here, just puts me in the frame of mind to be able to deliver, hopefully, a professional talk. Okay, I'm just moving along, folks, here because I've taken a glance at the clock and I don't want to overstep the time limits that I have. Maybe I will ask this question now that I've talked about the virtual medium, and I'm going to move on to some other things. Are there any embarrassing moments that you have had in the last few months since our world changed, particularly through this virtual medium, that you would either want to share in the chat, or even there may be an opportunity for you to unmute yourself? Maybe you can raise your hand digitally and you can just share with us. I think we've all seen those videos that have gone viral on social media about people who have been caught in uncompromising situations. You don't want to be that particular person. You know, it is true. This is unusual for most of us. It's different. And we're working with, you know, the children here and, you know, people dropping off deliveries. So you work with what you have going on, particularly at home, and mistakes will happen. I've had accidents here, the mic collapsed, but I'd like to think that I have prepared myself, that I'm showing you the best version of me. And even if something does go wrong, you over there will be able to say, you know what, it looks like you tried, but things sometimes do go wrong. And that's just the authentic Derek. But the point is, show yourself as you are. Show your values, your organization's values, your personal brand values. You know, you don't even have to be technically savvy. God knows I'm not the most technically savvy person. But if things were to go wrong, a part of that authenticity, it would be for me not to all of a sudden collapse into a wet ball of tears, but project some sort of confidence. The show must go on and hopefully improve with every meeting. Okay, I hope we're together, folks. And again, just as a check-in, Colin, are there any comments, interesting comments
Yes,
that people have put in there, or even a question or two that I can take now? We don't have to wait till the end.
Aline from Beirut makes the point that sometimes people have bad internet connections through no fault of their own.
Aline, we have the same issues here in Nairobi, Kenya. The internet is spotty at best. It maybe depends on how many devices. So there's certain things that you can do. I turn off all my extra devices that may be eating up my internet. I make sure nobody's on Netflix or anything like that, just so that I have the appropriate bandwidth. Also, I'm lucky that I can have a second sort of internet provider. So in the, you know, if something does happen and I sort of lose my connection here or the bandwidth is spotty, I can sort of switch. So those are some of the things that you have to do. But I realize sometimes it is difficult in the environment that you might with, particularly when it comes to bandwidth. There's something that I also do before I start every meeting, is I go on to a site, it's called speedtest.net, where I check the speed of the internet. And sometimes restarting or rebooting your computer can sort of get rid of some of those extra files that may be eating up some of the bandwidth that should be used for, say, a presentation like this. So I hope that answers that question, Eileen. Colin, anything else?
Brian makes a comment. He'd like to know your comments on virtual backgrounds.
In fact, I just saw it pop up on my screen, the virtual background, and I didn't mention it. Yes. Now, virtual backgrounds, I'm going to give you my personal viewpoint. I don't have a problem with virtual backgrounds. I have perhaps the type of virtual background. So certainly, if you have a virtual background that reflects your brand, your company's brand, no problem with that. But sometimes I feel there are virtual backgrounds where somebody's on a beach in, I don't know, Hawaii, and we're in a, a very serious business meeting, tends to take away a little bit of their credibility, if you know what I mean. So watch out for that. But if you do want to put a virtual background that's appropriate, that's great. And also be careful with the green screen. So I've seen virtual backgrounds where somebody's hand or their head will disappear depending on how big the green screen is. And that sometimes looks a little bit weird. So just be careful of that. But virtual backgrounds, if they're appropriate, go for it, for sure.
Aline asked a question. She says, sometimes it's embarrassing when your internet is disconnected. So can you give some tips to break the ice when you get back on again?
Yes. So Eileen, it's about engagement. If something happens and you lose your internet or your power goes, for example, I think being able to have a conversation, even outside of perhaps your presentation, is one of the ways that you can still connect. But now that I'm saying that, I realize that you may have lost your internet connection and so you can't connect with them. So one of the things that I would recommend is have a quote unquote producer. So now this meeting has been set up by the Alpha Group on Noble Manhattan, and Colin and Gerald are graciously acting the part of producer where they are taking my chats or any questions. And if in the unlikely event that I do lose power or I lose my internet, they will be able to fill that void until I'm able to reconnect. As I said, I have 2 internet connections. So if this one dies, I can switch to another one. And having somebody else to sort of help with that might alleviate that awkwardness. So I hope that answers that.
I think another one is to ensure, Derek, that you don't have any planned distractions coming in during your call. And when I put down here, Amazon tend to always knock on the door while I'm on a call. And that can be a little bit of a breakdown in that communication trail, and you lose your concentration. So I think it's important maybe to ensure that distractions are limited as far as possible.
You make an excellent point. And Amazon have impeccable timing just when you're in the middle of something. So yes, minimizing those distractions, telling people not to disturb you, putting a, don't disturb me sign on the door or wherever it might be, and hopefully arranging it so that nobody will come and knock on your door or ring your bell during your meeting or your presentation. You've got to take care of all of that, which is what I said before the meeting starts. All right, Joel, I'm just going to, Colin, I'm just going to move on just in the interest of time. A few more things I want to share with you. And just sort of reflecting on this whole thing about etiquette and manners, if you will. Or there's sort of a difference there. But apart from reflecting our values, I think it's important to sort of act, speak, present ourselves in an acceptable manner and make sort of manners part of your day-to-day dealings with other people. There's a gentleman we call by the name of David Mogeri. He always says during his training sessions, having words of, what is it that David says? He says, having words of courtesy when you are dealing with people. So thank you, please, excuse me, become part of your vocabulary. For some people, they struggle with that. So here's something for you. If your organization or company or your business has decided perhaps to go back to the office, all right? And maybe there may be members of your team who don't feel necessarily safe doing that. How would you handle that situation? It's a real thing that's happening because people are slowly going back into the office, depending on what country you're from. Well, one of the things that you want to do, particularly as a team leader or head of your organization, is be able to negotiate. At the very least, reach an agreement with members of your team. Have that conversation. It's just good etiquette to do that, to be able to discuss their concerns or even your concerns. And hopefully protocols have been put in place to sort of ease your fears when you do go back to the office, in terms of social distancing and all of that. And things are going to feel awkward, but the rules of etiquette still apply. It's about other people. How would they like to be treated? And having them feel comfortable. Okay. Now, if you have decided to go back, and maybe you're going back and it could be once a week or twice a week or something like that, you're going to find yourself in some potentially awkward situations. Like the handshake, for example. When I do this session in the real, quote unquote, before the world changed, I would spend literally an hour breaking down the anatomy of a handshake, because it is certainly to me so vital when it comes to being able to connect with people. But clearly we're in a different world. So what do you do if somebody sticks up their hand at you and they forget for a minute that they shouldn't be doing that? What are you going to do? Well, I think we've seen it. There's the elbow bump. You can do the namaste. What you don't want to do is make the other person, we should say, feel awkward. And so approach a situation like that, for example, with, again, maybe a lighter touch. I mean, if I can digress for a while, this whole thing about masks, there's some people who they're clearly off the rails when it comes to wearing or not wearing masks. Now, I'm not getting into the politics of that, but if you think that the other person that you are around should be wearing a mask and they're not, there's clearly a better way of having a conversation with that person. And the same thing goes for situations like the handshake, or you may be in an elevator or a lift, and so on and so forth. Okay, I wanted to touch on email before I finish this conversation, because email, for most, if not all of us, I think is a primary form of communication. And the things with email is that, particularly in the world that we live in today, email has gained a certain level of importance because it's a primary way of communicating, as I said, but email sort of lacks the body language of in-person communication. And those words now carry even more feeling. So an inappropriate tone can distract the reader. It can make the other person feel awkward. It can obstruct your message. You can send an email that says, if you don't get that to me by 1 p.m. today, we're going to miss our deadline. An interpretation could be, hey, dummy, we're going to miss the deadline and it's your fault. But you could say the same thing a different way. Today at 1 p.m., today's 1 p.m. deadline is particularly critical. So it would be great to get your feedback so that we can deliver to you on schedule. Thank you for your help, exclamation mark. Just be a little bit more judicious, I think is the word. When you are sending out those emails, already our stress levels and our resilience are all over the place. And you don't want to sort of exacerbate that. Further on to that, when it comes to email, so that's language. For me, my pet peeves, grammar, spelling, just watch those things, not to tip me over the edge. Listen, I'm not the original grammar Nazi, but and listen, look at the size of my hands. Sometimes I type a D instead of an S, the occasional typo, but consistently egregious mistakes when it comes to email says something about you and what you stand for. So watch out for that. There's a whole lot in email I'd have loved to talk about, but I'll just move on. Okay, what did I want to talk about? The next topic that I wanted to talk about was, yes, meetings. Okay, I think we're hopefully still good on time. So when it comes to meetings, clearly there's the virtual meetings. And actually, one of the questions that was asked earlier was, what happens if we lose people? The point I was trying to make there is that, particularly in these virtual meetings, making people feel engaged and comfortable is important. If you're running that meeting, we have a lot of regional directors here from the Alpha Group.
It's so true. There's quite a few of our amazing regional directors who are attending this meeting today. And probably because it's of great interest to them to ensure that their meetings are held correctly with the right etiquette, Derek. And I do think it is crucially important that etiquette is brought in to the way that you conduct any kind of meeting. So I truly understand what you're saying there. So absolutely. And in terms of sorting that out there, the other thing that I always find very, very important in terms of telephone communication is when you do call someone that you respect their time and ask them if it is okay to speak with them. Going into whatever it is that you wish to say before gaining permission from someone, I find very, very rude. Yeah, and I know we all get these calls where people call, they say good morning, and then they start talking. And actually, one should always seek permission to continue and ask if it's a convenient time to talk. So the telephone communication, I find, is definitely one of those areas that etiquette needs to be improved upon.
Hello, Colin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
So the unthinkable happened, right? My connection went awry. But as I said, you just move on and you sort of roll with the punches. So as I continue, I was talking about virtual meetings, and part of virtual meetings is being able to engage people, engage them at the beginning. So at the beginning of the meeting, you can have sort of a conversation about where they're from, maybe have a conversation about something interesting that happened, depending on how well you know them. All of these things are ways that you can connect with your audience. And I'm just going to turn this down because there seems to be a bit of an echo.
Yeah, there's a sound isn't great, and there is definitely an echo. Yeah.
Okay. I think hopefully that's a little bit better. Let's see. Okay, Murphy's Law, right?
That's a bit better now, Derek.
So the other thing is, when you are in perhaps real world meetings, it's important to be able to run these meetings, particularly if you're doing them face to face, just being aware of a couple of things. Number one, you want to be aware of people's different personalities and how you are able to get different viewpoints, particularly as people are contributing. Certainly give them time, allow them to be able to contribute in the meetings, and allow people to be able to connect with you as you run these particular meetings. Okay, can you guys still hear me and see me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So I think I'm just going to wrap up for now, and I want to leave you with one of my, it's an acronym, and I think it encompasses a lot of what we have talked about today. And I'm going to call it the CASH formula for success, particularly when it comes to your professionalism, when it comes to etiquette, when it comes to connecting with people, where the K stands for knowledge. So attending sessions like this, where you are gathering perhaps tips or certain knowledge in certain areas, when it comes to how you can be more professional, go onto different websites, get information from different sources. The K for knowledge, I think, is really important. The A is for attitude. So having an attitude of perhaps, positivity. Even as I said, as has happened here, things might not work out the way they are. You might have some sort of an issue or a problem or some sort of setback, but approaching these with a positive attitude, I think, again, there's that transfer of sort of positive emotions, positive feelings, positive behavior. As you're running those meetings, be positive. If you're the person who is, wanting people to go along with your thoughts, you want to persuade them to your way of thinking, having a positive attitude, even in the face of what might be difficult circumstances. The S stands for skills, and skills, particularly for me, are soft skills, interpersonal skills. So everything from becoming a better networker to a better presenter, to the skill of being able to use your voice and body language. A lot of us, we have the technical aptitude, we have certainly the qualifications, academically or otherwise, but the third missing leg of that stool would be these soft skills. And then you have the H, which would be habits. So the habit of speaking appropriately to people, the success work habit, if you will, of running a virtual meeting appropriately, the success work habit of making people feel good about themselves. My final quote before I hand over to Colin is from the late, great Maya Angelou, who said, "People will not necessarily remember what you said. They might not even remember what you did, but they will certainly remember how you made them feel. So make them, that person, feel great. The platinum room. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I think I can take a couple of questions.
Hi, everyone. If you'd like to type any questions you have for Derek here, he'll be delighted to answer them. Okay. I've put down an acronym.
Look, Colin, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly clear. Yeah, we're just waiting for some questions to come through.
We have a number of thank yous, Derek. So that's lovely. Well done.
Good. I think everybody is pretty clear unless there's any delay there. So I guess over to you then, Gerard.
Okay. Start my camera. So thank you very much, Derek. I just want to really say that from my heart. You covered so much in actually such a short time. Clear, concise, and articulate. I've been writing here. You can see my pad. I've made a number of notes, and some of the things I took away were that your image, everything you've talked about is raising your brand, your image, your persona, the way that you appear to the world. And being able to follow these simple guidelines basically will stack things in your favor. Simple things, easy to do, but also easy not to do if we don't think about them clearly. And what I did like very much, your tips about the lighting, the microphone, the background, and towards the end, we could see your microphone there, and I was very impressed with it. So a good professional setup. And I think the message there is that whatever little money it takes to get a good camera, microphone, and lighting is actually money well spent. Because today we're doing so many of these wonderful meetings with our people all over the world. So I want to thank you, Derek, from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank our audience for watching and listening and participating with your questions. And we're delighted to announce that Derek is going to be joining our organization as a director in the very near future. So we're going to be absolutely overjoyed to be working closely with Derek over the weeks, months, and years to come. So you'll all get to know him even better. Thank you all so much for your time, for your presence, and for your company.